Another month, another explosion.
SpaceX takes one step forward and 2 steps back.
James Webb Images Cosmic Lion.
And should space junk be more than what it is now? All coming up on the next Orbital Edge. You found us for episode 3.7 of Orbital Edge. And back with us today is Randi, our co-host. And then we also have Nate, our spaceflight correspondent. So as you all know the drill, we're going to start off with launches. However, we're going to start off with a launch that quite didn't complete its mission. We're going to roll the footage here of what happened in China with its Long March 7A rocket. It is going to explode during max Q. It's going to be coming right about... Yeah. Lauren did a really good video on what max Q is and a state of maximum dynamic pressure, which this is the part where the rocket exploded. So Randi, give us a little more details on what probably caused this explosion and anything else that you found out about, its engine that it uses.
Yeah, so what you just saw was on Monday, August 10th. Crowds were spellbound when a catastrophic in-flight breakup erupted in the skies, as you saw, on the Wenchang, how do you say that again? Wenchang Space Launch Site on the island of Henan in China. They initially gathered to watch the Long March 7A rocket which was carrying the Changxing 4B to provide communication services to users around the world. And approximately at 8 p.m. when it lifted off in Beijing time, 85 seconds after liftoff, it erupted. A huge blast of liquid oxygen and kerosene illuminated the skies, as you saw, spraying clouds, smoke, and debris everywhere. The Long March 7A rocket is on its 18th mission, only failing previously once before during its maiden flight in March of 2020. Since March of 2020, the rocket soon returned to flight successfully about a year later, and completed over a dozen successful flights before Monday's mishap. Now, based on the timing of Monday's disassembly, we can assume the malfunction occurred during the flight of the first stage of the vehicle, likely around the time, like you said, of maximum dynamic pressure, as the rocket accelerated through the lower atmosphere. Now, it is, though, possible the malfunction also could have been an onboard ordnance known as a flight termination system, which ignites whenever the vehicle goes off course. However, if the problem is due to the first stage's main engine, which is also called the YF-100, it could be broader complications for China's space program. Now, the YF-100 is China's most commonly used rocket engine, which is currently powering 9 other Chinese rockets. If this is the source of the problem, it could delay one of China's most important launches, the country's ambitious Chang'e 7 robotic mission to the moon, which is due to launch on a Long March 5, 2 weeks from now. Back to you, Chad.
All right, next up we have a launch from China, and this is going to be the H3 rocket. Let's roll a footage.
The flight mode is on. 全システム発射準備完了. All systems are go. Main engine start. main engine start. Saturday 3点か return. Ignited storage round
I like that vantage point that they have for this launch. That reflection looks really cool. It's gonna be like, I don't know, 3 to 5 miles away from that pad.
2026年8月11日午前4時23分31秒に種子島宇宙センターから打ち上げられました。We have a successful liftoff of HC launch
This flawless liftoff occurred from Japan's Tanegashima Space Center on August 10th, 2026 at 1923 Universal Coordinated Time. This launch carried the Quasi-Zenith Satellite System, or QZSS, to an elliptical geosynchronous orbit. It's a cutting-edge GPS network engineered specifically to overcome the country's unique geographical challenges and enables high-elevation visibility to overcome towering urban terrains, rugged canyons, and mountainous terrain. Additionally, the core objective of this 3-spacecraft constellation is to broadcast a seamless blend of GPS interoperable augmentation signals alongside exclusive original Japanese frequencies. All right, that is going to wrap launches up. We're going to start off with some awesome epic space news with Julia. James Webb has delivered the most stunning images, and Julia, take us away on that.
Yes, so JWST, the James Webb Space Telescope, just dropped some new images of the Lion Nebula, also called NGC 2392. This is a planetary nebula, which actually has nothing to do with planets. It's just the remnant of a dead star, roughly the mass of the sun. And we see planetary nebulae in all sorts of shapes and sizes and colors. It just depends on the chemical composition of the star and how evenly it sheds its gas when it dies. So JWST was able to image this planetary nebula with 2 of its instruments. I am a huge JWST nerd, and I could talk about those instruments for hours. But the 2 it used are the near-infrared camera and mid-infrared instrument. These are both ridiculously complex instruments. They have imaging and spectroscopy and coronagraph capabilities. And the images that it was able to create of this nebula are just stunning. They have 2 slightly different wavelength ranges. So by taking the images separately and combining them, we just got these absolutely killer composite images. You can see in the center, there's kind of a circle that represents like the lion's head, and then the less dense outer shell is supposed to be its mane. And it is just beautiful. I hardly ever see those stunning purples so vividly in images of nebulae, and I just could look at those pictures for hours. I think they're stunning, and I always love to see a new JWST drop.
It looks like an explosion.
Can I, Surgeon? Actually, it looks like 2 different things to me. It looks like a human eye, but then it also looks like an atom with the nucleus in the center.
I'd say from here it looks like a jellyfish.
Yeah, a little bit of that too.
Looks like a human eye, definitely.
It also looks like one of those cloud effects that you can get in those video production packages where you can it looks like you threw something on a dusty ground and it goes poof outward, and it rolls clouds in a circular radial outward motion. So it looks like a lot of cool things. Julie, I wanted to quickly ask, you said it 2 different wavelengths. Does that mean it's doing X-ray and infrared, or is it infrared but it's 2 wavelengths inside the infrared? I was kind of a little bit confused on what you meant by that.
Yeah, so I would have to double check to see what the actual wavelength ranges are, but the near infrared camera is going to be looking at wavelengths in the near infrared range, and then the mid infrared instrument is going to be looking at wavelengths in the mid infrared range. So they're both in the greater infrared, but kind of two different points within that.
Awesome. All right, again, thanks, Julia, for that. Nathan, something happened on the moon and it's really cool, but I also have a follow-up story on that as well. So kind of let us know what happened to the moon and what does SpaceX have to do with it?
Well, SpaceX's second stage crashed into the moon.
Okay.
Bang. Not with a bang.
So basically that second stage was from them pushing a moon lander there. The thing about the Falcon 9 rocket is that's why it happened. The Falcon 9 rocket, it's trying to be a rocket for all missions, and it wasn't able to properly deorbit that second stage back to Earth. So the way that works is if you're going to the moon, that thing is not going to have the delta V to come back and deorbit properly. So the best thing to do is just use a little bit of fuel and let that thing change trajectory and slam it to the moon and do it for science. So that's the story about SpaceX and the moon, and it's something really realistic that has happened as opposed to their speculative stuff, which we're going to get into later today on the topic. And even my space news bit is going to be getting into some of SpaceX shenanigans here. So I'm going to move right into that, and they're going to stop rideshare missions up until 2028. So they're all booked. So if you want to launch something on the Falcon 9 rocket, good luck. And their motivations on this is to, I guess, move everything to Starship. That's great and all, but it can be counterintuitive into lowering costs, because the original idea for reusability is to lower launch cost for everybody. But is that really the case all the time? Not so, because multi-tier customers for getting rideshare missions with this rocket will outbid spots, meaning small satellite startups are going to have a tough time coming up with the money to get on this rocket. And it's going to leave them with no launch options other than ESA with European Space Agency, Rocket Labs, or China. And if you could just kind of visually see the problem here, imagine launching a 1 kilogram payload on a Starship and thinking that's going to be cheap. Probably not, and not really realistic. So, with that said, is this really good or bad news? We can't really know for sure until we reach 2028. So, will launches open back up? Time will tell. So next in space news, I want to talk a little bit about Blue Origin. We have an answer. And I was right. I told you so. So CEO Dave Limp said that there was an issue with the main oxygen valve on a BE-4 engine that was the source of the explosion that destroyed the New Glenn rocket during a static fire in May ahead of its 4th orbital flight. So somewhere in the engines, I knew it. I knew what was going on. I just didn't really peg it down to an oxygen valve because there's so many components in an engine. It's not like I'm going to guess the actual part number and the part that went wrong. I'm going to give you the general area of where the fault occurred because I'm cool like that. So that's going to do it for my space news. We're going to take a break when we come back. The topic of the show, and this is going to be a good one, which is, should we redefine space junk? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We're going to finally get into the topic of the show. Should space junk be redefined? And we're each going to take our stab at this and what our opinion is, and a little bit of a disclaimer. We're really going to have a hot take on this as far as redefining space junk. Because in my opinion, things can be space junk on day one. And I think Starlink should be considered space junk and data centers in space. But that's my opinion. I'm going to get more into that a little bit later. So we're going to start off with Randi. What can you tell us a little bit about what space junk is right now? And should we redefine space junk to broaden the horizons on, mega constellations and stuff like that.
Well, I do agree with you about the Starlink being considered only because of Elon Musk's personal take on things and what he just did with his company. So Elon Musk and SpaceX actually just got approved to place 15,000 more satellites, Starlink satellites, into low Earth orbit, which is only half the number that the company originally requested. And this is all to increase internet speed and latency issues around the world, as well as still pushing for AI data centers to be added to the already orbital congestion. So with currently 40,000 objects being tracked by space agencies and over 1 million smaller objects not being tracked, this surplus of satellites brings the Kessler syndrome into fulfillment. But on the brighter side, the plans to clean up the clutter is being explored and currently in the works for one specific company. It's a Swiss startup called ClearSpace Space Agency, which is developing the ClearSpace 1 mission in partnership with the European Space Agency to capture and remove defected debris from low Earth orbit. What they have is a tow truck style spacecraft that's designed to rendezvous and grab abandoned hardware. It's equipped with specialized 4-arm robotic capture system, and its first target will be a 112 kilogram Vega secondary payload adapter, or VESPA. It's an upper stage that was left in orbit since 2013. Now the chaser craft will clamp onto the target and plunge it and itself back into Earth's atmosphere, causing both to burn up. And this ClearSpace 1 mission is currently scheduled for 2029. However, it was originally supposed to go 2026, but their original object that they were going to grab got damaged by space debris. So, exactly, it got damaged by space debris. So now their mission has been pushed even further. So, because of all the space junk, in order to clean it up, has been delayed for a few more years. So, I definitely agree with you that they're sending up way too much, and I do not think he's thinking of the consequences. So, that's my opinion.
Yes, awesomely said. At least they're trying to do something about it.
Elon Musk isn't, though.
I know. It seems like the other companies are doing it, but SpaceX, they launch internal space payloads like Starlink, so why wouldn't they counter launch, to help clean up debris, stuff like that?
From what I've learned, this is the only company actually with a plan to clean up. It's the only one. So that is a big issue, actually.
Yeah. All right. We're going to move on to Julia. And now you did make a space pod for us about the Kessler syndrome. And everybody in the audience right now, please watch that just after this show, just so you get a little bit more information on the consequences of space debris and or too many satellites in space. But Julia's going to talk a little bit more about, what are the consequences of having all this stuff up there. So, Julia, what have you got for us on that?
Yes. If you have seen my space pod, you probably have an idea of what I'm going to say. I have some pretty strong opinions of this. So right now we currently define space junk as mechanical debris from human-made instruments, from satellites that are no longer in use, that are no longer functional. And I think we have to change the definition of space junk to not only include the functionality of the satellites, but also really start thinking about who is this actually affecting, both positively and negatively. So like with the Starlink satellites, do we really need 15,000 of them, right? At a certain point, who is this really benefiting? Is it contributing to the greater good of our species and of the environment, or are they just being deployed to make the rich people even richer, right? So it's just insane to me. We have all these satellites up there, and even if they're technically functional, a lot of them are causing way more harm than good. As an observational astronomer, I have to mention the fact that I can't go out and observe a single exoplanet transit, which only lasts about 2 hours, without getting at least like 5 images that have satellite trails in them that I normally have to delete. So, that's directly impacting me. But more broadly speaking, the more space junk, the more satellites and mechanical debris we have up there, there's also going to start being some negative environmental effects that are going to directly affect us. You know, when satellites get to a certain point in their orbit or when they're being deorbited, they're going to burn up, and these heavy metal particles are going to be loose in our atmosphere. And it's not going to be good for anyone. It's not going to be good for us. It's not going to be good for animals. It's not going to be good for plant life. This has the potential to really damage our global ecosystem. So, you know, I just really think that we need to expand the definition of space junk and introduce some policies for satellites that are being deployed so that even if they're functional, we're really analyzing who is this going to affect? You know, is this really going to help the majority of our species? If we have 10,000 satellites up there, you know, and only 1,000 of them are actually improving people's quality of life in some way or another, do we really need all 10,000? So that's kind of where I stand on all that. I'm very pro keeping our atmosphere space as clean as possible.
Yeah, I got a couple things on that. Well, first thing you were mentioning about does it have a net value to society? So if there's more negatives than positives, we should call it space junk. And then another thing you were talking about how when they get deorbited, they do ruin our atmosphere. That kind of calls for a reevaluation on where we're going to define space at, like the Kármán line of where space begins. So what's that? All these satellites and debris are going to actually raise the atmosphere higher and higher and higher. We will no longer be able to classify those higher areas as space anymore. So I think that's going to be maybe a fun topic in the future where we're going to say, hey, let's redefine the altitude of what space is, because all of these satellites are just kicking its ass, you know, at what, 180 kilometers in altitude. Well, okay, we'll just move up space. And if anything gets launched there in low Earth orbit, we don't have to call it spaceflight anymore. We just call it like aero. We just call it aero something. So yeah,
Aero debris.
Yeah. Julia, thanks again for all of that. That was some really good information. So Nathan, what do you think about all this?
I mean, I think we got to look at a lot of bottom lines here. Is it gonna fall and hurt someone or the ocean? Is it gonna cause damage? And I'm talking about the whole debris here.
Well, it already caused damage to the moon.
Yeah. Well,
Recently. So yeah, it's definitely caused
yeah.
damage.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it worth retrieving, like whether for historic sake or for recycling? Just a lot of bottom lines here. We got to make a list of pros and cons to see what we can do, what's worth it, and what isn't. So
I'm honestly kind of disappointed that this wasn't initially thought of before this whole space race began. They thought at the beginning. They're so busy thinking about what they want to do, they're not thinking if they should do it. And there's no plan to clean it up other than this one company in Switzerland. And you know, they don't know
what are they going to do? Just get a net?
Yeah, well, they've already damaged the oceans. They've already damaged the grounds, and now they're damaging space. So, like, when will they stop?
We'll just have to. The way I see it, you'll have to get like a.
I see Wally. In our future.
That too.
That's
Yeah, I
what
was thinking like a space dumpster, like they just remotely control it, like and just like, okay, so there's a piece here. Go over here, close the lid, push it forward so the debris gets to the back of the lid or the bin, push it forward, and then
Collect it
so
all
on and so forth. Yeah.
The atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah. Just something to think about. Yeah.
Definitely heading towards Wally, I feel.
Yeah.
We will be there. The thing with the AI, you know, speaking of AI, there's AI slop. That's a term. That's the #1 term actually for the year. But we can call this launch slop. So AI data centers in space is realistically going to be launch slop. And the funny thing about space, okay, SpaceX stands for space exploration. Well,
Can't really explore if you can't get out.
Yeah.
yeah. And another thing, if SpaceX is going to no longer launch stuff for customers anymore, and they're just going to do data centers in space, still do Starlink, and this is all for the investors and shareholders, I wouldn't
Fish
call
about
them.
that.
This SpaceX should just be Space S, space speculation.
Or space profit.
Shots fired.
Space.
Or Kevin said on our show, space exploitation.
There you go.
Oof.
I like that one. But that is very fishy that they're not like signing anybody else up to send stuff up. It's got a funny smell to it. It's very
It does.
very bizarre,
Yeah.
but it also fits very well into the column of greed.
Yeah.
It just kind of fits nice and snugly in there.
Yeah. The carrot on the stick here is Starship, but we need to see the proof. We don't even see customers' names on any payload manifest. So until we start seeing that, we can't take SpaceX seriously on their future launch campaigns. Other than Artemis, because they're contracted to do that, but they're still horribly, even carrying that out. But the new SpaceX, the high bay has been completed here at the Space Coast where they are building Starship. So if you do live around here, they just completed the physical outside of the building. Looks really cool. It's about the same size as the vehicle assembly building. So with that there, this is going to be their actual test. They're going to be building Starship there, and we're going to see what Starship is actually going to do and do for the actual space program. So we're going to find out again by 2028 on all these questions we've had on the show so far. I think I've beaten a dead horse here already. So if I've missed anything, do check out After Dark, which will be released after the show, where we kind of further the show a little bit in case we've missed anything. And we also talk about fun topics as well. Still kind of space related, but Nathan's got something really cool coming up about a game.
No, a show.
A show. Okay. Awesome. So yeah, do check out After Dark, where we actually review games, space shows, space movies, and things like that. With that said, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, comments. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Thanks for sticking around after the break, and hopefully you get this orbital trivia question right, and we'll have the answer for you at the end of the show. All right, so we're going to begin our comments here, and this is about what we've talked about on the show. Nate, why don't you go through this comment with us and see what actually Under has to say.
Okay, thanks, Chad. Actually, Under says, I imagine they can make a dispenser size like a V3 Starling that can hold lots of small satellites. Ejects the flat pack dispenser egg, and it can pop off lots of small sats from itself.
That works until 60 customers want different orbital requirements. So different altitudes, different orbital inclinations. So I don't think something like that is realistic. But again, maybe 4 or 5 larger payloads would work. But again, as far as what we were talking about earlier, this just doesn't seem very feasible. So that's going to do it for this episode of Orbital Edge. And if you've liked what we've done so far, consider subscribing. We've also got a Patreon link so you can help support us in the future. And again, After Dark is going to be released about a week after this episode. So go check it out. Again, I'm your host, Chad, and this is Randi, our co-host, and Nate, our spaceflight correspondent. We will see you next month. Bye.